Hey everybody, DJ Lou here, and up next we are going to talk about the Reloop Elite Mixer. Alright everybody, before we start the video, please navigate down, hit that subscribe button, make sure you ding that notification bell as well. Also make sure to like the video, and please, if you want to support the channel, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. First and foremost, I want to thank Ben Stowe and NLFX for allowing me to have this mixer to try out. Without them, I would not have this in front of me. But that being said, I'm not being paid by them nor Reloop for this. This is my honest assessment after using this for a few weeks, giving it a try. And to be a little bit different than everybody else, I'm trying this on Virtual DJ. Now, I did give this a try in Serato just to compare both Serato and Virtual DJ. Just really quick on kind of just the layout and how things would react. And as I would expect, everything was one-to-one. You know, there was no surprises or gotchas. So what are my first impressions on the mixer itself? Very just solid. This thing, what you would expect from a flagship mixer, everything seems well logically laid out, well constructed. You know, this is what I would expect for a mixer in this price range. And right now there's essentially three models to compare in this price range. You have the Reloop Elite, you have the older Pioneer S9, which has not had an update as of late, which is interesting, and the Rane 70. So you definitely have now three choices for new mixers in this price range, and there's definitely some things that sets the Reloop Elite apart. And we'll start by talking about one of the main things that you'll see difference here versus, say, the S9 and 70 is the lack of the toggles, and they actually have this whole area for effects. So you already have an entire effect area that's kind of logically laid out kind of in the corner. You can actually stack your effects if you want. There's actually a effect mode that you can change as well with the built-in effects, or to use naturally whatever Serato or Virtual DJ is doing for you. The big difference is how the effects engage. So I've got an echo set here right now. I'm gonna wait for things to kind of come off. You actually have to wait for the end of, say, your 4 count. 1, 2. And it'll hold it for a minute. The decay actually takes a while. Of course, you can kind of change this in parameters, but now you can actually control that as you will. Now, with my NS7 III, I actually have this with a radio stat style button, but I actually have a channel fader styled control over this. I think it's actually very smart. Now, personally for me though, it is just a little bit extra to kind of stretch out, kind of control that. But again, nothing really wrong with it, just a bit different. I do like it, don't get me wrong. I'm just not sure if that's my real preference. And an interesting note, you can actually change your effect on the mixer that's actually mapped. In software, you just have to hold each one and you change it. It does a quick 2-digit code for the type of effect. In this case, EC is echo. Very nice. Again, you don't have to worry about going to the laptop to changing things if you don't want to. With the way I've been kind of working the effect is I'll actually have the echoes basically engaged, ready to go. It's actually my favorite effect by far to use. And when I get to that point in the song, all I do is just engage my echo. I'll bring my fader down, and then I'll just control it as needed. Very simple, very logical. You can do it over and over and over again, but it is something different compared to the other things that are out there. So definitely something of a preference choice. Now, another thing of a preference choice that I definitely give kudos to is loop control. Now, all the flagship mixers now are doing this individual loop control over here. The 72, if not mistaken, they still have it in pad, but with the 70 and the S9, you just have a dedicated area for loops. Same thing goes for here. I think there's also a nice little distinguishing color. They got everything in amber over here, so it sets itself apart from the rest of the mixer. And it has a single button in and out. And I personally love this. I do a lot of older funk and soul and R&B, or even rock and stuff like that, that is not syncopated. Now, if you want to do a manual loop control on one of these other mixers, you actually have to hold shift and hit the in and hit the out. It's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but just to be able to single press it, I think is more logical. Now, naturally with Virtual DJ, I can flip that and remap that over anyways, but with Serato, you would basically be stuck with that shift control in it. But single button, it flashes when it's engaged. I think it's a very, very smart design where you can just press the button to engage whatever loop length you have. You actually have your loop links here on it. When you get into the smaller links, it actually blinks up to your max length within it. I think it's a very smart design. This is definitely by far my favorite feature out of it is the way loop control is done on this. As we get into the rest of the controller, we have your typical full kills on your EQ. For those who are not in the know, Virtual DJ 2021 can now map stems to either your EQ and your fader and your gain, or do it as map control on your pads. I personally do it on pads. I'll show you how to do it here in a minute, but I wanted to make sure I still had EQ control over my songs. There's definitely a few songs that I need to brighten up or change up, especially if I'm mixing an older set with some newer R&B or hip hop and whatnot. So definitely not messing with the controls for me in 2021. But natively, everything's great, has the typical kill that you would expect. Everything's perfect. Gain, I want to say just as a note, compared to my 62, the gain is maybe, the master gain is maybe just a bit quieter. Not by much, but I do notice my gain is up definitely a little bit more compared to where I would be, say, on the 62. I still think sound-wise, it's great. Maybe just slightly duller. Just slightly duller than the 62, but the 62 has been notorious as like the best sounding mixer that's out there, at least in my opinion. And I always think that they color it a little bit. I think they have a little bit more punch and a little bit more high end coming out stock of the 62. And naturally, of course, you can EQ all this as necessary, but just as a one-to-one comparison, it sounds great. Maybe just needs a little bit coloring on the music itself. Does have booth outs with a interesting note that there's actually a stereo and mono change for that. I think that's actually great, especially if you just have a single monitor. Say if you're in a booth and you want to change that, so that way you're only not catching just one channel. Suspiciously though, why do they have a mono stereo switch on this but not have it on the masters? That I'm a little bit just perplexed that they thought of it having that in here but not having a mono switch on the master. But otherwise, nothing showstopper or anything like that. Your typical deck loading sound, just very logical where it's placed, works well. Double click to go into insta doubles. If I do have one beef of this at all is where the cue placement is in comparison to some of the other mixers. I do think it's a little bit out of place being right here. The 70 has theirs down here. Again, everybody's starting to go back to this original kind of, I want to say the Rane 57 style of having almost like a crossover style control over it. I think it's smart actually having it, but its location, I think I would prefer it somewhere else. I think it just kind of crowds the space a little bit up here, but again, I like having the amount of control that's over there. Coming down lower, we got our pad control. Everything is definitely nice. I actually think these are the largest pads that are out there. Everything just has a great feel to it. If you're into pad play and all that, definitely I don't think you'll have any problem with that at all. The bank effect control is right below, and I actually think it's a logical place to put this. The S9 actually has it here in the middle, and you only have one control for all the banks. This has individual left and right on this, and with the 70 you actually have your controls here on the top. I think this is actually a logical layout for this design. I also happen to like the way that they feel. I think they have a little bit more of a clicky feedback to it. I think that's awesome with the way it feels. And for custom mappings, because they actually do have two custom mappings in here, where save flips would be for Serato, I've actually mapped it to stems in Virtual DJ 2021. And for those that don't know, stems basically just takes, in Virtual DJ, takes the original song, breaks it down into 5 components so you can actually make essentially an a cappella or a instrumental out of it. So as I'm doing that, I could have just the vocals on it. I could do a full cut on it. I could just have bass, very handy. So that's one effect change that I did on this. I'm again using the save flips zone for that. In addition, for my loop control, for loop position, normally you would use the parameter button for this. I actually use shift and the loop control knob to change that. I think that's actually the more logical of the design personally for myself. And that's the beauty of virtual DJs. You can map these to your discretion. Getting down to the faders, all in a fader all the time, both on your channels and your crossfader. I've always liked the feel of in a faders. I think they're a great fader. Don't get me wrong, the 70, the 72, the S9, all just advanced faders, really great. Do I personally need it? Nah, I like the faders a lot, so I could definitely live with these. It's definitely no negative not having some modern magnetic fader that's out there. Now going to the front panel itself, we do have our mic control. It has a talkover control on it. It does have our EQ, but one thing to note on the EQ on this mixer, it uses a 1/4 inch input. It does not use an XLR or combo jack in it. And some of the newer mixers out there now have 2 inputs. So is that a showstopper for me? No. I actually do all my mic control on a digital mixer, so it does not affect me at all. But if you are completely reliant on mic control inside a mixer, what you essentially need to do is either have an adapter or go with a different cable that goes XLR into 1/4, or come up with some other idea for your mic input. But just to note, that is one shortcoming, if you will, of the mixer. It does have your contours for your crossover and your channels, and it does have your sampler of volume control on the front as well, and also has your a normal 1/4 inch and 3.5 millimeter headphone input. Going into the back of it, we do have a USB hub in it, which I think is now critical now in 2020 and beyond, where you have things like the Rane 12s, you have things like the Reloop Mark 1, Mark 2 8000 models that have either dicer type control or also has mode control as well. You need a hub nowadays, let's just face it. And the modern mixer typically has it. Absent, though, is the Pioneer S9, and I'm actually surprised that the S9 has not come to market with a Mark II that has a hub in it. Still could be coming, but it is something lacking on that model. But for the Elite and also the Rane 70 and 72 has the hub inside. In addition, it has your typical complement of XLR outs, it has your booth outs, has your typical inputs in here, everything you would expect from a flagship mixer. So one other quick note about the size of this, the width is actually ever so more than my Rane 62. It's also a bit more deep, and that's actually pretty standard now. Seems all these mixers are just a little bit more deep, but compared, this will fit inside my Odyssey FZ10 mix case. This will not. It's just a little bit too wide. Now, on some other mixers like the S9, it will technically fit, but with no room in the back of an older style case. But just a quick reminder for those who are using a 62 right now, let's say, and you're looking at a modern mixer, you're almost definitely going to have to put in a new case. With all this being said, what do I think about the Reloop Elite? I really like this mixer. I don't think there's a perfect mixer out there. I think every mixer out there has some positive and minuses that are out there. I think there's a lot of positive in here. Particularly the loop control, I think is just a superior design compared to everybody else. The effect control, there's nothing wrong with it. I actually think it's a very smart design, and I've gotten used to it. I still might think the paddle would be the better design of the two. But to differentiate itself, I think this is a very smart direction that Reloop went to. And having that finite control of, basically your wet dry, your level and depth as they put it on the mixer, I think that is a very smart way for people who want to be super creative with the way that they're doing things as opposed to just quickly jump in, jump out. I am one of those ones, echo in, echo out, go into my next song. I might, of course, do some scratching and whatnot, but overall, having this effect control and being able to, of course, stack effects and everything, I think this is pretty standard now on all the models. But once you get used to rhythm on how to use it, I think it becomes second nature. So for me, The one negative, if anything, is just reminding myself that when to bring in the effect, and how this is different compared to some of the others. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's a true negative. It's just a different way of approaching the design and workflow of how to mix with this mixer. Now, as I said, I am in the market for buying one of these myself. I'm still debating between this, the S9, if I wanted to go back to that, and the Rane 70. But if you're considering, like me, which mixer to get, and you start to really focus on the Reloop Elite, I got good news for you. Thanks to Ben Stowe and NLFX, I actually have a promo code to be able to save some money on the Reloop Elite. So if you reach out to them and use the code LouReloop, you will get a nice little discount on this mixer. This is truly a great mixer with some very unique capabilities, especially the loops. I love the loop control on this. If you're in the market for it, this is definitely something you should consider. There's a video, and I truly hope you like this review, and if so, make sure you hit that thumbs up below and make sure you hit subscribe as well. Head over to my Patreon page and make sure to support the channel if possible. Naturally, if you like videos and reviews like this and want to see more, check out everything else on my channel. Hope everybody stays well. See you later.